The hospital room smelled like plastic and blood. Two machines kept rhythm beside two small beds, each beep cutting through the silence like a reminder of what was stolen. The nurses whispered when they passed, avoiding my eyes. My twins, Oliver and Lucas, lay still under white sheets, bruised, bandaged, broken. The night 6 boys decided my children were their entertainment, the town decided to look away. Hit like, subscribe for more betrayal stories, and comment on your city or country. Nothing in my years of service prepared me for the sound of those machines. I'd faced gunfire, explosions, and screams. But this was different. This was the sound of helplessness. Somewhere down the hall, a doctor spoke with quiet, deliberate authority. Possible coma stage 2. No response yet. Words I'd never heard in war now weighed heavier than bullets. The call didn't come from Tessa, my wife. It came from a janitor at the high school field. His voice trembled over the phone. They're tied up, sir. Your kids, someone hogtied them to the goalpost. At 2 a.m., in near freezing rain. By the time I reached the field, the paramedics were already there. I remember one of them vomiting into the grass. The headlights painted a cruel scene. Two small bodies hanging limp against the metal bars, duct tape around their wrists and ankles. Their jerseys soaked and torn. One shoe missing, the other dangling off by a lace. Whoever did this left them to die out there. When I reached for them, the medic stopped me. Sir, please, let us handle them. But every part of me screamed to rip through that tape and hold my boys. Every soldier instinct I'd ever buried came back in one violent heartbeat. Later, at the hospital, they told me it could have been hours before they were found. The field lights had been shut off. Only a janitor locking up saw the glint of silver duct tape by chance. If not for that, I'd be standing over 2 graves instead of 2 hospital beds. Tessa arrived 20 minutes after me. Her makeup was perfect, hair done, no tears. She stood in the doorway for a full 10 seconds before stepping inside, her purse slung over her arm, phone in hand. "Oh God, Grant," was all she said, her voice soft but detached. When I turned to her, I expected panic or fury. Instead, I found calculation. She whispered, "Don't make a scene, please. The reporters are already outside. The whole town is talking." I stared at her. "Our sons are fighting for their lives, and you're worried about reporters." Her lips tightened. "This is a small town. Things spread fast. Let the police handle it." Then she turned to the mirror and wiped a smudge of mascara. Something in me shifted that night. It was small, imperceptible, like a gear snapping loose inside a machine. I didn't say another word. I just looked at Oliver's small hand lying motionless on the sheets and thought about every time she'd told me I was too protective. The sheriff showed up not long after. He was polite at first, offering a handshake I didn't take. His name was Sheriff Hauser, the kind of man who carried his badge like a family heirloom. "We got the football team all vouched for," he said. "Some of them claim they were just fooling around after practice. Roughhousing gone wrong." "Roughhousing," I repeated. "They tied up 2 10-year-olds and beat them unconscious." He shrugged. "We'll see what sticks. Judge Dominic's already aware. He's, advising we keep things calm unless charges hold." I saw it then, the wall. The invisible barrier between truth and protection, between rich kids and justice. 6 star players, all sons of men with shiny trucks and polished last names. My boys, children of a retired soldier nobody in this town cared about. When the sheriff left, I drove back to the field. The rain had started again, thin streaks under the floodlights. The smell of wet dirt and dried blood mixed in the air. The ground beneath the goalpost was still marked with 2 faint outlines where my sons had collapsed. I knelt there, placed my hand on the cold turf, and found something glimmering near the base of the post, a broken metal button. Varsity football, engraved with the number 7, the kind the team wears on their Letterman jackets. I pocketed it gently, as if handling evidence at a crime scene. At home, the house felt haunted. Their sketches still lay on the kitchen table, half-drawn superheroes, school notebooks, a soda can. The television played local news showing the same field, the same empty goalpost, now wrapped in yellow tape. The anchor's voice said words like tragedy, community, and hope for recovery. None of them meant a thing. Tessa walked in with takeaway from downtown like it was any other night. "You should eat," she said, setting the bag down. I asked her if she'd talked to the school. She nodded, replying too easily. "Yes. Principal said it's unfortunate, but boys will be boys. We can't ruin promising futures over an accident." That line froze me more than the field's rain ever could. Promising futures. I repeated slowly. Oliver's skull is fractured. Lucas might not walk again. She put both hands up. "I'm saying what they said. Don't twist this into something dark." Her calmness wasn't denial, it was defense. Of image. Of social standing. Of belonging to the right circle of parents. I'd seen that look before. Not in her, but in commanding officers protecting their careers while soldiers bled out. When she went upstairs, I sat in the living room with the button in my palm, the one from the field. I rolled it between my fingers until the skin of my hand warmed it, like some kind of ritual. Footsteps creaked above me. Tessa pacing, phone murmurs, water running. I could picture her reflection in the mirror again, fixing something that looked back. Hours later, I got up, went into the garage, and opened the old steel trunk from my service days. Inside, packed neatly under my discharge papers, was my notebook labeled Recon. Maps, coordinates, tactical sketches, surveillance plans, remnants of who I was before trying to be the man Tessa wanted me to be. That notebook didn't belong to this version of me, the father sitting under fluorescent lights. But as I lifted it out, I felt the weight of it settle in my hands like an old weapon rediscovered. I didn't plan revenge that night. Not yet. I planned understanding. Patterns. Truth. Because in my world, truth wasn't found in statements. It was found in evidence. By dawn, Tessa was gone. Left a note on the counter. Going to the sheriff's office. Don't do anything rash. The same handwriting she used for grocery lists. I drove back to the hospital. The machine still beeped in rhythm. Oliver's fingers twitched once as I held his hand. A reflex, maybe nothing more. But to me, that moment said everything. That some part of him was still fighting. I promised, right there, in silence, that I would fight too. Not like before. Not with bullets or fists. But with precision. With patience. With quiet rage. Outside, the town's banners flapped in early wind. Go Lions. State champions. Champions. That word turned my stomach. Children in comas. Champions on posters. Officials smiling for cameras. I finally understood what this place really worshipped. And that realization changed everything. The first move wouldn't be noise. It would be stillness. Listening. Watching. Because silence is a soldier's oldest weapon. The morning after, I walked into the sheriff's office carrying two things, a photograph of the varsity button and the police report that said no suspects identified. Behind the counter, the deputy's smirk gave me my first warning. "You're Grant, right? The twins' dad." He said it like he was reading off a bad headline. He was young, too young to carry that much arrogance. "Sheriff Hauser in." "Busy morning," he said, tapping a mug that read "Support your local Lions," the same logo the football team wore on their helmets. I leaned across the counter just enough for our eyes to meet. Then unbusy him. The smirk faded. 5 minutes later, Hauser waved me into his office. He sat behind his desk, sleeves rolled up like a man pretending to work hard. Framed photos covered the back wall. Sheriff with the team, sheriff with Judge Dominic at some banquet, sheriff shaking hands with the school principal under a Pride in Our Youth banner. Every frame told me the same story. Loyalty in one direction. I set the photo of the broken metal button down on his desk. Found this under the goalpost. He glanced at it once, then reached for his coffee. "We checked the field, remember? Didn't see any buttons." "Because you weren't really looking," I said. His jaw shifted. "I warned you last night. Don't go pushing nonsense. Those boys have statements, alibis, parents with names that matter in this county. You You've got a chip on your shoulder and a military record most folks around here don't care for. I don't care who they are, I said. They tied up children. He leaned forward, hands clasped. Then let the process do its job. I didn't answer. Not yet. I watched the condensation slide down his coffee mug until it hit the wood. That quiet space between us said everything. The process would do its job, and that job was to clean up this mess quietly. When I got back to the hospital, Tessa was there again, dressed too neatly for a grieving mother, talking softly to a reporter outside the room. When she noticed me, she ended the conversation mid-sentence. "You can't just barge into the sheriff's office like that," she scolded, voice low, eyes flicking toward the nurse in the hallway. "The sheriff's office is lying," I told her. "They're protecting the football team. They're kids, Grant. So are our sons." Her sigh was sharp, practiced. "I know you think there's some conspiracy, but this isn't one of your missions. Sometimes accidents just happen." Accident. That word again. She used it like a shield. I stared at her until she looked away. There was fear in her eyes, not for the boys, but fear of being dragged into scandal. Around noon, I went back to the high school. The lot was full of news vans, banners, and students whispering in corners. On the bleachers, a group of boys were laughing, loud, confident, untouched. In the middle sat Ryder, the quarterback. His golden hair, perfect grin, the kind of face the town built billboards around. He noticed me before I said a word. The laughter fell into silence. One of the others muttered, "That's the psycho vet." Ryder stood, walked a few steps closer. "You looking for something, sir?" His tone hid mockery beneath politeness. I looked at his jacket. The number 7, embroidered bright and clean. "Where were you 2 nights ago?" He shrugged. "Practicing. Then home." "Alone?" "Couple teammates stayed to hang out. Coach knows we work late." They were all watching, that smirk spreading among them like contagion. "If that button belongs to you," I said evenly, "it won't stay secret long." He leaned in just enough to whisper, "Evidence disappears faster than people think around here." Then smiled for the camera crew setting up nearby. Part of me wanted to grab him, pull that smirk off his face, remind him that not every man walks unprotected. But I remembered my son's faces in those hospital beds. They needed justice, not another violent father making headlines. I turned and walked away. When I got home that night, the silence in the house felt heavier. Tessa had cooked, but no one ate. The plate stayed untouched. After she muttered something about keeping appearances, she went upstairs. I sat in the dark for a long time, staring at the photograph of my twins taped to the fridge. A sound pulled me from my thoughts, a faint vibration from my pocket. A message had just arrived. "You're not the only one asking questions." No name, no number saved in my phone. Just that simple sentence. I replied, "Who is this?" The answer came slowly. "Check your mailbox tonight." Alone. Half an hour later, under porch lights, I found an unmarked envelope. Inside were 2 printed photos, grainy, night vision images of 6 figures standing under the same goalpost from that night. One of them held something shiny in the rain, a phone, flashlight, or maybe a weapon. The timestamp on the corner matched the hour my twins went missing. My pulse thudded once hard. Whoever sent this had access to internal footage, maybe security, maybe someone inside the department. The next morning, I drove to the sheriff's office again, but stopped short when I saw him outside, joking with Judge Dominic by his cruiser. Their laughter came easy, like 2 men certain no storm would reach them. The judge was tall, dressed in the kind of confidence money buys. When our eyes met, his smile faded. He walked over, hand extended. "Mr. Grant, I'm deeply sorry for your situation." I didn't shake it. He nodded as if expecting that, voice soft but heavy with authority. "Let me offer some friendly advice. There's a fine line between a grieving father and a man making false accusations. You cross it, and things get unpleasant fast. Understand?" I wanted to punch through that smile. But I'd been warned once before, in different sands, under different flags, that open anger only hands power to the wrong man. "Understood," I said, and turned back to my truck. That night, I didn't sleep. I studied those 2 photographs again and mapped every inch of the field from memory. The bleachers, streetlights, camera angles. If someone could send these, someone else could hide others. The truth was out there. The town had just buried it under its own pride. At sunrise, I went back. No police tape remained. The lines had already been repainted for Friday night's game. Fresh banners hung from the fence. For our team. 6 signatures scrawled across one corner in black marker. Each signature matched the list from the athletic roster my twins used to talk about. When I crouched down near the goalpost, I found something they didn't bother to remove. A scrap of gray plastic tape half buried in the turf, edges cracked from the cold. I picked it up carefully and slipped it into my jacket pocket. Another piece of truth. At the hospital, a nurse told me there'd been no major change, though Oliver's heart rate was stabilizing. Lucas remained unresponsive. I asked if she could play audio by their bedside, something familiar. She nodded, said soft music helps. I stayed through the night, talking to them quietly, telling them about the field, the people, the lies building around them. Every word felt like a vow, a steady promise that I'd tear down every piece of the wall, keeping the truth buried. At some point, I glanced toward the hallway glass. Tessa stood there, watching silently, her face distant. When she realized I saw her, she walked away without a word. I stared after her until the door clicked. Something in her walk was wrong, too poised for someone crushed by tragedy. Her phone was still in her hand, face illuminated as she texted someone I couldn't see. As she disappeared around the corner, the monitor beside Oliver's bed beeped once, sharper than usual. Not a change in his vitals, just a noise that cut through the silence, loud enough to keep me awake till morning. Because in that split second, I realized I wasn't fighting just a corrupt town anymore. There was something, or someone, inside my own house helping them. And if that was true, the war hadn't even started yet. Morning sunlight spilled through the blinds like a lie, warm, golden, and completely wrong. In the hospital's cafeteria, the smell of burnt coffee clung to every breath. I didn't taste anything anymore. Sleep came in minutes, left in seconds. My phone buzzed with messages from people pretending to care. Praying for you. Stay strong, buddy. The town loved drama, just not the kind that made them uncomfortable. By noon, I was standing in the parking lot of the high school again. 3rd day in a row. The gates were open, banners flapping in the soft wind. A game was scheduled that night. The team wasn't suspended, not even questioned. They were being celebrated. Somewhere in those hallways, 6 star players walked free while my boys fought to breathe. I walked through the front entrance. The secretary looked up, eyes flicking toward the visitor log. Parent appointments are, I'm not here for an appointment. My voice made her freeze mid-sentence. Principal in. She hesitated, glanced at a security camera, then nodded toward the far hallway. The building smelled of floor polish and teenage perfume. Lockers slammed. Laughter echoed. Casual, cruel, familiar. When I reached the main hallway, they were there again. Ryder and the same group from the bleachers. Letterman jackets, perfect posture, smiles that could sell toothpaste. Their voices lowered when they saw me, but none stepped aside. Ryder leaned on the locker behind him, casual like a man greeting an old friend. Hey, Mr. G, how are the boys? Something inside my chest tightened hard enough to crack bone. He said it softly, not kindly, just enough to test how far he could push. Students started gathering around. Whispers, phones out, half expecting me to explode. I didn't give him the satisfaction. I just looked at him long enough for that grin to twitch. That's when the principal appeared behind me. Mr. Grant, my office, please. The man's tone carried decades of diplomacy, meant to defuse, not defend. Inside, his desk was covered in championship trophies, plaques, photos of his teams posing with local officials. Another wall of quiet corruption. Now, he began, sitting heavily. I understand your frustration. No, I cut him off. You understand headlines. You understand politics. You don't understand what it's like to see your kids broken beyond recognition. He exhaled through his nose, nervous but trying to stay composed. The sheriff and Judge Dominic have assured me this is being looked into thoroughly. We need to maintain composure until evidence. There is evidence. I snapped. A varsity button, photographs, recordings of those boys at the field. His eyes flicked up at that word, recordings. It was fast, but it was there. I see. Well, if you have that, you should turn it in through proper. I did. It disappeared. That finally cracked his calm. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. I stood slowly. You and I both know this town protects its golden children. But I'm not leaving this alone. If you care about the reputation you're trying to protect, make sure those boys know the next time they open their mouths, the world will be listening. When I turned toward the door, the secretary was hovering just beyond it, pretending to shuffle papers. Under her arm, I noticed a rolled-up banner that read, "Good luck, Lions, District Finals." She avoided my stare. Back in the hall, Ryder and his friends were gone, but the whispers weren't. Students watched me like I was part of the show now, the broken vet who lost his mind. The narrative was shifting, and I could feel it. The town had started rewriting the story before it was even told. That night, I drove home through streets decorated for victory. Blue and gold ribbons stretched across storefronts. A get well sign for my boys hung beside one that said, "In Ryder we trust." Tessa was in the kitchen, laptop open, headset on. She was on a call. Her campaign for the school board was still running. Not a single poster taken down. When she noticed me, she pressed mute, gave me a tense smile, and disconnected. "You can't show up at the school like that," she said. "Someone has to. They're already painting you like," she paused, searching for the word, "a threat. Maybe they should be careful what they threaten back." Her eyes hardened. "Do you even hear yourself? This obsession, it's not helping our sons. They're not your sons anymore." "That's not what I said. It's what you meant." She picked up her laptop and walked upstairs without another word. The silence she left behind was thicker than smoke. When the house finally settled, I went down to the basement. Old gear still sat inside crates I hadn't touched in years. Headsets, field recorders, small covert cameras. Tools I used to save people once. Now, I needed them to find truth. By dawn, I had every entrance of the house wired. Living room, garage, kitchen, even the phone line. If something was happening behind my back, I was done guessing. 2 nights later, the trap paid off. Around midnight, Tessa's voice drifted from the kitchen, low, practiced, careful. She was on a call again. "Dominic, I told you. He's starting to dig around. If you can calm the sheriff, we can make it stop. I'll delete everything on my end." The sound of ice clinking in a glass. A pause. Her tone dropped to a whisper. "Yes, I used my phone. It was my number, but it wasn't me who texted them that night. I wanted them to get scared, not." Her voice cracked for half a second. Then, steal again. "If anyone finds out I was involved, my campaign is over." The call ended. The silence that followed lasted a lifetime. I stood there, just listening to the faint hum of the fridge, the clicking of the heater, the distant breathing of children in hospital beds miles away. I rewound the audio 3 times, each word burning deeper. It wasn't foolproof yet, but it was close enough to know I didn't imagine it. The text that lured Oliver and Lucas to that field came from her phone. At sunrise, she came downstairs, coffee cup in hand, eyes red but jaw tight. "You didn't sleep." "No." She looked past me to the basement door. "What's down there?" "History," I said. She frowned. "You scare me sometimes." "Good," I answered quietly. "Because people do desperate things when they're scared. Maybe you'll finally understand that." Her hand trembled just enough to spill a drop of coffee onto the counter. She didn't wipe it. She just stared at it, blank, then turned and walked away. By that afternoon, word had reached me that the school board had backed her nomination. Even after everything, the same community that ignored the attack now wanted her representing family values. That told me everything about what I was really up against. Not just 6 kids, but an entire structure built on silence. So I decided to become the noise. Quiet noise. The kind that eats away from the inside until the walls crack. That night, I installed one last camera, hidden behind the emblem on her campaign banner in the living room. If she was still talking to Dominic or the sheriff, that feed would record it. Before midnight, she was on the phone again. This time, whispering more urgently. If Grant finds out, it's over. Delete the backups tonight. The man's voice on the other end wasn't fully clear, but I caught one sentence before the static. Then make sure he never sees the file. What file? What were they hiding? I stared at the monitor glowing in the dark, every muscle locked. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just betrayal. It was coordination. A network. One that stretched from my own home to the heart of the town's power. And by sunrise, I knew the next step wouldn't just be gathering evidence. It would be infiltration. The soldier in me wasn't gone. He was waiting, watching quietly from the reflection of a hospital window. And now he was awake. By morning, my house wasn't a home anymore. It was an observation post. Every corner hummed with quiet electricity, tiny red indicators buried behind picture frames and vents. Years in Delta Force had taught me one thing. Truth doesn't confess, it slips. People reveal themselves when they think no one's listening. Tessa had left early, campaign folder in hand, telling me she had meetings downtown. Her smile didn't reach past habit anymore. The hospital called soon after. Oliver's vitals were steady, but Lucas's brain activity had dipped again. Hearing that hurt in a way combat never did. Every breath my boys took felt like a countdown. The town was dressing itself for another game that night. Glitter paint, posters, chants. It made me sick to think of Ryder and his friends being applauded while my sons lay in sterile beds. I stood outside the field again, watching students rehearse under the same goalpost. Oblivious. Protected. Mid-afternoon, I returned home to collect the audio feeds. The one from the kitchen buzzed softly, and as I calibrated, I caught it, Tessa's voice again. Sharp, urgent. If that file isn't gone by tonight, it'll bury all of us. Then a male voice, thicker, distorted. Relax, Tessa. Dominic's handling it. The sheriff already wiped the call records. I froze. Call records. That was the missing piece. The texts that lured my boys had been deleted, but archived call logs. Those were government property. Someone had interfered with official evidence. I rewound the audio, listening again to every syllable, timing the background noises. A clinking spoon. The faint bark of a dog. A passing freight train horn. That train ran only once a day, at 3:15 p.m., which meant the call happened between 3:14 and 3:16. That detail mattered because at that exact time, Tessa told me she was meeting the school lawyer. Her lie was now stamped in sound and seconds. I printed a transcript, placed it neatly in a file, and sealed it inside a waterproof pouch. Old soldier habits. Never keep one copy. By nightfall, I'd hidden duplicates in 3 places, under a loose floorboard, behind a vent, and in the trunk of my truck. Every operation needs a witness you can trust. That night, mine came in the form of an unexpected message from an unknown number. Heard you're recording the right people. Be careful. They already tapped your phone. Am no signature beyond that single letter. Morgan, the woman from the courthouse I'd met years ago while filing a veteran's compensation claim. She'd been fearless, direct, the kind of lawyer who didn't flinch at bullies in suits. For the first time, something like timing or fate was on my side. I met her at a roadside diner just past midnight. The place smelled of fry oil and old coffee, but it was quiet. Her hair was tied back, worn expression masking worry. Someone fed me your story through a channel I trust, she said, sliding into the booth. I'm not here to promise miracles, but I can tell you how to make these people panic. She explained the town's structure, the school board, the judge, the sheriff's office, the local news station, all tied through sponsorship money. If you hit one, she said, they close ranks. But if you expose 2 at once, the others scatter. I asked her about the file they kept mentioning. She nodded slowly. Every school event, including games, is recorded for liability. If that assault on your boys happened on the field, I guarantee there's camera footage. But it never reached evidence. I felt something cold crawl through me. So Dominic buried it. She slid a scrap of paper across the table. A half-burned list of internal storage servers linked to the school district. The digital backups route through Judge Dominic's private server. Get that file, and you unravel them all. She leaned closer. You understand what happens when you start this, right? They'll come for you. Legally first, maybe worse after. My answer was quiet. I know what happens when you do nothing too. Outside, rain began again, steady as clockwork. I drove home through empty streets, headlights cutting through mist. When I reached my driveway, my porch light was already on, something Tessa never left lit. Through the window, her silhouette moved back and forth, pacing. I entered silently. She startled when she saw me. Grant, what are you doing out this late? Could ask you the same, I said, nodding at her phone lying face down on the counter. Who were you talking to? Just campaign work. She was lying, but I let it hang. Better they believed I was still blind a little longer. Later, when she went upstairs, I checked the phone. Locked. New passcode. Always a sign of guilt. I replaced it exactly where she left it and slipped a small transmitter under the counter near where she usually stood during her calls. Within hours, the device caught activity. The low hum of her voice drifted back through my receiver. Soft words, practiced calm. Yes, he's suspicious already. Dominic said if this flares up, everything unravels before the election. Her tone softened suddenly. Just tell me it wasn't supposed to go that far. I didn't want them hurt, just scared. Silence on the other side. Then one chilling line. Male, distorted. You paid for a scare. They turned it into a message. The line clicked off. I stared at the recorder, so long my eyes began to ache. Paid. That single word tore through me more brutally than any bullet. She hadn't been framed or blackmailed. She'd hired them. Maybe not to harm, but the cause didn't matter anymore. Intention doesn't erase blood. Dawn came gray and brittle. The town buzzed for its next game, and my wife dressed for her public appearance. By the time she left, my decision was made. I wasn't calling the sheriff or the local press. I was going through the one back door no one but a soldier would think of, the live broadcast system at the high school's field. The same one used to stream football games online. If I could plant the right audio, truth would no longer belong to me. It would belong to every viewer across the state. By midday, I parked behind the maintenance shed near the field. The janitor who'd found my boys, an old man named Felix, was there again, smoking quietly by the dumpsters. He looked up, recognized me, nodded once. You shouldn't be here, he murmured. Neither should they, I said, gesturing toward the players practicing under the clouds. He ground out his cigarette and reached into his pocket, handing me a flash drive. Found this stuck in the back of the security DVR. You didn't get it from me. When I plugged it into my laptop later, a distorted but visible scene flickered alive. Rain, shadows, 6 figures under the goalpost. Laughter at first, then violent motion, cries, the chaos I had imagined 100 times. It wasn't complete, but it was enough. Enough to start the fall. As the footage looped, one detail froze me. A 6th silhouette stepping forward, smaller, hesitant, feminine, holding a phone. Tessa. The camera caught her for half a second before lightning flared across the sky, her face flashing clear as day. I sat back, breathing hard. The person who sent that original text wasn't just an accomplice by accident. She was present, watching, part of it. The machine inside me, the one I'd tried so long to bury, clicked back into motion. The patience was over. The evidence was mine now. And if the town wanted silence, I was about to teach it what silence truly cost. The footage played on a loop, grainy, wet, merciless. Every time lightning flashed, I saw it again. 6 shadows holding 2 smaller ones down, duct tape glinting through the rain. Then that face. Even through distortion, there was no mistaking her. Tessa. holding her phone steady like she couldn't look away, like she was documenting a performance she'd helped direct. The air in the room thickened until breathing felt wrong. I closed the laptop, the hum of the fan still spinning like a blade inside my skull. There were no tears left in me, only the slow burn of realization turning into something colder than rage, calculation. For hours, I sat in the dark, thinking back. Every argument, every time she'd told me the twins needed to be tougher, that they couldn't grow up soft in a hard world. I'd shrugged it off as strict parenting. Now the words replayed differently. She hadn't just wanted them tough. She wanted them broken until they fit her image of what strength looked like. By evening, I drove to the hospital. I couldn't watch that footage again. I needed to see them instead. The nurse said nothing as she scanned my ID, but I saw the look in her eyes. Pity, the kind people give when they already know something you haven't said aloud. Oliver's monitors blinked evenly. Lucas remained still, his small chest moving under thin blankets. I sat between them, one hand on each bed. "You didn't deserve any of this," I whispered. Their silence pressed against me like an answer. When I stood to leave, I looked once more at the hallway mirror. My reflection felt foreign, eyes hardened, shoulders squared for war again. The kind of posture I swore I'd retired with my uniform. That night, I set the dinner table like nothing was wrong. Candlelight. 2 plates. Her favorite wine. My hands didn't shake. Tessa arrived late, heels clicking on the tile. "What's this?" she asked, confused, setting her purse down. "Dinner," I said calmly. "You've been busy. We barely speak anymore." She hesitated, reading me like she used to read a crowd before a speech. Then, slowly she sat. The silence between us said everything neither of us wanted to start. "I saw the video," I said quietly. Her fork paused midair. "What video?" I reached into my jacket pocket, set the small drive on the table. The candlelight caught the metallic edge. She didn't touch it, didn't even breathe. "I didn't know it would go that far," she whispered finally. The calm inside me deepened, terrifying even to myself. "You paid them, didn't you?" Her eyes flickered. "It wasn't supposed to be that. I just wanted them scared, to stop hanging around those art kids, to stop being weak. Ryder promised it would be harmless." My stomach twisted at that name. "Ryder, you spoke to him personally." She nodded, tears starting to rise though none fell. "Dominic's son. He called after that parent dinner. Said the team could help toughen them up. He said it'd keep them from getting bullied." I laughed once, a dry, hollow sound. "So your solution to bullying was to hire bullies?" She flinched, then covered her face with her hands. "I didn't think." "No," I cut her off. "You didn't. You wanted control. You wanted them to be trophies like everything else in your perfect life." Her shoulders shook. "Please, Grant." I was scared. I just wanted us to fit in. That word, fit in, landed like shrapnel. Those boys were lying in comas because she wanted dinner invitations with Dominic's family and a seat on a committee. "I served 16 years, I said slowly, "and I have never once met an enemy cruel enough to use her own family for acceptance." The silence between us newborn again, fragile and final. She reached for the wine bottle. "We can fix this," she said, voice trembling. "We control what goes public. If you leak that footage, we both go down." "There's no we left," I said. Her hand froze mid-pour. She started to speak, but the words collapsed back into her throat. "I already made copies," I continued. "One stays with me. One goes with the lawyer. One's off-site. Even if you destroy this house, the truth survives." Her eyes widened. "You wouldn't." I leaned forward. "You organized the message that broke our children. You stood there while they screamed, and then you called it an accident." For once, she didn't answer with excuses. Her mouth opened, stripped of performance. There was just a quiet exhale, a kind of surrender. "If you release it," she whispered, "it'll destroy this family." I stood. "There's no family left to destroy." She let out a small sob, followed by a whisper that wasn't apology but fear. "They'll come for you too, you know. Dominic won't let this spread. They'll make you look insane." Dangerous. Let them, I said, walking toward the door. I've been called worse by better men. When I left, she didn't follow. Outside, the air was cold enough to sting. I drove straight to Morgan's office, that flash drive still in my pocket. The building was dark except a single lamp glowing through a window upstairs. She greeted me with the same exhaustion I carried. I need this preserved, I told her, handing over the drive. She slid it into a labeled envelope, sealed it, and wrote across the front in clean letters. Evidence. Chain of custody. You're sure you want to go public? She asked. Yes, but not yet. When they think they've won. She studied me, reading something unspoken. You're not planning violence, are you? I shook my head. Not physical. Not my kind of violence. Her expression softened slightly. Then I'll hold this. When you say the word, I'll make sure the world listens. Walking back through the parking lot, I felt the strange stillness that came before missions. The moment when soldiers already accepted what might follow. At home, Tessa's car was gone. A note sat on the counter. A single sentence in her careful handwriting. You've ruined everything. The next morning, the town woke to celebration. Banners, horns, laughter. The football team had made state finals. Local news called them heroes, sons of integrity. Their photograph filled the front page, 6 young men smiling, invincible under the same goalposts still stained with my son's blood. I stood in the grocery store checkout staring at that paper until an old woman behind me whispered, "Such a tragedy what happened to those boys. But thank God the team didn't lose their season." She didn't mean harm. She was just echoing what everyone believed. That reputation weighed more than children's lives. That evening, I stood outside the field again, not watching the game, but the crowd. Every cheer sounded like betrayal. Every light from the scoreboard shone on a lie. I wasn't angry anymore. Just certain. Certainty is colder, steadier. It builds like quiet thunder beneath skin. Back home, I opened my laptop one last time and repositioned the files. I uploaded a single still frame, lightning flashing across the goalpost, revealing her face for a split second. No caption, no explanation, just silence. I didn't send it anywhere. Not yet, but soon. When I finally sat down, the empty chair across from me carried her perfume, the ghost of a family that had never been real. Upstairs, the quiet felt heavier. For the first time, I knew how this story would end, not with a bullet, not with fire, but with truth so loud it would burn through everything they built. I turned off the light. The house exhaled behind me, and somewhere, over the low hum of the refrigerator, I could hear a faint ring, her phone buzzing upstairs, unanswered, again and again. The day after I exposed Tessa's secret, silence filled the house like fog. Not peaceful silence, the kind that hums with tension in every corner. Curtains stayed drawn, screens dark, phone turned off. Outside, the neighborhood carried on as though everything was fine. Inside, it felt like a stage after the actors were gone. Props still standing, air heavy with everything unsaid. Most people would have called the police, maybe even packed a bag and left town. But I'd lived too long in places where you couldn't trust the ones enforcing the law. You learned to build your own version of justice, measured, patient, undeniable. I spent that morning on the floor of my office with a map spread across the rug. Pins stabbed through names: Ryder, Blake, Tristan, Colin, Preston, Hunter, the 6. Red threads connected their homes, their parents' businesses, their path of power that ran straight up to Judge Dominic's estate. At the edge of those threads, I pinned one more name: Tessa. The circle was complete. Each thread represented not just what they'd done, but what they valued most: scholarships, money, clean records, public image. The same things they protected by destroying others. I wasn't going after their bodies. I was going after their futures. I called Morgan from a burner phone. "We start now." Her answer came steady. "You'll need proof that sticks, not sympathy. People like Dominic don't fall from emotion. They fall from evidence." "I have more than evidence." I looked toward the locked drawer holding the drive. I have motive, witnesses, and time. By sundown, the plan was set. She'd handle the legal framework. I'd handle the field work. The first step was exposure, subtle but strategic. Anonymous leaks to universities, sponsors, and recruitment boards. The system didn't protect morality, but it worshipped liability. The room slowly became my command post. Laptops open, trails of text, background checks, hacking tutorials I never wanted to use again. I wasn't proud of the skills I'd kept buried, but this town had forced me back into a mindset I swore off. Still, as I worked, my mind kept drifting to the hospital. The sound of those monitors never left me. Between tasks, I'd replay messages from the nurse, small updates, sometimes an unchanged heart rate, sometimes a movement. Anything that sounded like a heartbeat of hope. On the third night, while checking data logs, I noticed something new. An unfamiliar email pinged through the encrypted account I used for storage. No subject, no body. Just one attachment. A photo. Tessa, standing outside the courthouse, shaking hands with Judge Dominic. Her campaign logo bright against her dress. Beneath it, a short typed message. You always underestimated how far she'll go. No signature. The next morning, her face was on every local paper. They'd framed it as a mother's resilience. She used our tragedy for sympathy. Her campaign slogan read, Faith, Family, Fortitude. The irony didn't even sting anymore. It just hardened. I turned the page. A quote from her speech. Even in tragedy, we must forgive and rebuild. Forgive. I put the newspaper down, picked up the phone again, and sent a message to Morgan. We move tonight. She arrived after dark, pulling into the alley behind my house in an old SUV. Inside, she scanned the table covered in pinned photos and timelines. This isn't just a case anymore, she said. It's an operation. Only way these people understand. Together we sorted everything she could use. Financial transactions between Dominic and the sheriff's department, Tessa's call logs cross-referenced with his campaign donations, and screenshots from the footage Felix saved. Each detail a nail in their carefully built facade. When we finished, she fixed her eyes on me. You realize once this starts, there's no walking back. Once dominoes fall, there's no control over how many go with them. I don't want control, I said. I want truth out loud. She nodded once, then slid a folder across the table. This will trigger the chain. The media will get the files, the board will get the copies, and Dominic's office will burn itself trying to scrub what's already viral. But Grant, she paused, searching my face. You need to be ready for what comes next. What's that? People are going to turn on you. Especially her. She'll sell you out to save herself. She already did. When she left, I stayed by the window. Headlights passed outside, casting stripes of light across the room. Somewhere, a dog barked, then silence again. I moved toward the hospital an hour before dawn. The building glowed like a floating island in the dark. Walking those halls had become routine, but this time something felt different, an unease in the air. Nurses avoided eye contact. When I reached the twins' room, my chest tightened. Oliver's bed was empty. Before panic took hold, the nurse hurried in. He's stable, she said, hands raised. He's just in testing. You can wait here. Her smile was small, but real. He started blinking on command. Blinking. It wasn't much, but it was progress. For the first time in months, hope didn't feel like betrayal. I sat in that chair for hours until sunlight filled the room. Then I whispered, I'm still here, and left quietly. On my way out, I passed the waiting room TV, playing live coverage from the courthouse. Tessa stood behind a podium, the town clapping for her. The reporter's voice echoed, Candidate Tessa Grant, wife of war hero Grant, continues her leadership run despite personal tragedy. Her courage and community involvement have inspired many. I stared at that sentence. Courage. Inside the truck, I started the engine and drove not home, but to the judge's estate. Security lights shimmered across manicured lawns. I parked under the trees and watched as Tessa's car appeared half an hour later, pulling into the private gate. So that was it. She hadn't just joined them. She was part of the cleanup. I took out the camera, set the long lens, and snapped each frame. Her walking up the stairs, Dominic opening the door, her stepping inside. Evidence of betrayal didn't always need violence. Sometimes it was just two people sharing the same lie. At dawn, I uploaded everything to Morgan's protected server, labeling the folder Phase 1 complete. The reply came minutes later. Received. On standby for release. Back home, I brewed coffee and waited. Waiting wasn't new for me. In the service, patience was a weapon. You watch patterns repeat until you know exactly when to strike. The news broke within hours. Not the scandal, not yet. The first ripple came from the universities. Two of the star players lost their scholarships overnight after anonymous footage surfaced of them underage drinking and vandalizing school property. The timing was perfect. No one could trace it to me or Morgan. By evening, local news hinted at an internal investigation. Dominic looked shaken on camera, lips tight, jaw stiff, the confident judge losing footing for the first time. Tessa called that night. Her voice was steady, but her tone cracked at the edges. Did you do this? I don't know what you mean. You ruined everything I built. No, I said quietly. You built the ruin yourself. I just took down the curtains. Her breathing sharpened. They'll destroy you. Maybe, I said, but they'll burn first. The silence on the line stretched. I almost expected tears. Instead, she whispered, I'm not going down alone. The call ended. For a long time, I stared at the phone, waiting for guilt to resurface. But it didn't. Only resolve stayed. By midnight, the war room glowed again. Monitors alive, evidence lined in sequence. The quiet revenge was no longer a plan. It was progress. And as I marked the last pin on the board, I thought of Oliver's blinking eyes and Lucas's unmoving hand. For the first time since that night, I whispered not a prayer, but an order, the kind I used to give to men before missions. Stay alive. Just stay alive a little longer. Because soon, the people who left them broken were about to learn what happens when silence finally becomes a weapon. The town woke that morning in confusion. Not fear, yet, but confusion. 2 university scholarships revoked, 1 college recruiter withdrawing interest, and whispers filling locker rooms like static. The golden image of their Lions team had cracked, just slightly, but enough for everyone to notice. At breakfast, new anchors speculated about unverified footage, saying the players were young men facing unfair scrutiny. None dared mention my sons. Not their names, not even what happened at that field. Just footage. Like the truth was a rumor. I didn't care. Noise meant attention. Attention meant pressure. My coffee went cold as I refreshed the headlines again and again, watching the wall of silence begin to chip. Then a text from Morgan. Phase 2 ready. Already in motion, I replied. Phase 2 wasn't revenge. It was exposure disguised as coincidence. The same social media that had cheered those boys into local gods would now eat them alive. Anonymous posts, dated screenshots, stories from former classmates who had stayed quiet too long. Each seed planted gently, like a whisper at first, spreading through the feeds like infection. 6 lions caught in scandal, 1 blog read by nightfall. Cover-up involving local judge suspected. The system worked like clockwork now. I didn't need to push. It moved itself. You give people a villain, and they do the rest. But behind that quiet satisfaction, something else pressed heavy. Oliver's nurse had called again. He was moving his fingers more consistently, but there was still no sign of Lucas waking. For every small victory outside, there was still one world frozen in place. I visited them that night. It was storming again, same rhythm as the night that ruined everything. Sitting beside those beds, I spoke softly, more to myself than them. They're starting to break, I said. Not from bullets, but from proof. The next morning, I woke to find my front porch bleeding color. Spray paint. Someone had written one word across my door in dripping red. Traitor. I didn't flinch. Fear was part of the cost. Instead, I washed it clean and let the water run until the paint blurred into mud. They needed me angry. They wouldn't get it. Later that day, Morgan called from the courthouse. It's worse than we thought. Dominic's trying to silence the leaks by ordering injunctions against half the local stations. He can't plug 30 holes with one lawsuit, I said. No, she replied, but he's buying time. We need something that drops publicly, something impossible to take down. I turned the key on my safe and pulled out a small hard drive, the backup of Felix's original video. The scene was incomplete, but damning enough. The shape of the 6 figures, the laughter in the rain, the voices, the sound of duct tape ripping. Tomorrow morning, I said, the world gets to see what they did. Before dawn broke, I uploaded the footage through offshore proxies, timed posts set to deploy across multiple platforms within hours. There'd be no way to trace them, no way to undo it. At exactly 8:17 a.m., it hit every screen. First, silence online. Then disbelief. Then chaos. Video analysis channels, parents, local citizens, all sharing, arguing, screaming. Hashtags flooded timelines in minutes. Hashtag justice for the twins trended nationwide before noon. Some called it fake, others demanded answers. The school district shut down its website. The players' parents called in lawyers. At home, I sat and watched the machine devour its architects. By afternoon, reporters were parked outside Judge Dominic's gated property. A helicopter hovered over the sheriff's office. Yet through all of it, I kept thinking about one thing. The moment when that lightning struck on camera, revealing her face, Tessa's face, in the background. The world hadn't seen that version yet. That was still mine. That frame would be the final strike. For now, I needed the collapse to feel like gravity, slow and unstoppable. Late that evening, Morgan arrived, soaked from rain, eyes sharp behind exhaustion. It's spreading like wildfire, she said. 2 of the boys' fathers have already resigned from the town board. Dominic called for an emergency meeting tonight. You're smiling, I said. She exhaled. Because I've waited my entire career to see men like that sweat. But her grin faded when she glanced past me to the family photos still on the mantel. You kept them up, she noted. Those aren't memories, I said quietly. They're lessons. We worked through the night designing the next wave, the legal anchor to hold everything once the media storm passed. Morgan would handle the filings, using her old colleague in the state attorney's office to push it beyond local control. Once state authorities stepped in, Dominic couldn't suffocate it. Around 3 a.m., a car slowed outside my home, tires crunching gravel. Headlights flicked once, twice, then vanished. I grabbed the window frame and watched through the slits. No movement afterward. No door. Just quiet. By morning, only muddy tire marks remained. It wasn't paranoia. It was confirmation. They were watching me now. The town's golden suns were cracking, and their fathers had begun their counterattack. When I arrived at the hospital that afternoon, the head nurse moved with unease. We had a visitor this morning, she said. Someone claimed to be family. We didn't let them in, of course, but he left a card. She handed it to me. The card read only, "You're not saving anyone, soldier." No name, no logo, but someone had drawn 6 tally marks at the bottom in black pen. That night, I didn't sleep. Instead, I rewired my surveillance setup into something new, not defense, but offense. Every camera now streamed to a hardened cloud drive. Every feed timestamped. Every angle protected. If they planned to intimidate me, they would end up capturing proof of their own crimes instead. The next day brought chaos. Headquarters of the sheriff's office was cordoned off by federal investigators. News reports suggested bribery and evidence tampering. Anonymous insiders fed them documents that none of us had leaked yet. Someone else was helping, and it wasn't Morgan. When I checked my encrypted inbox, there it was again, a message from that same untraceable account that had warned me before. You're welcome, but it's not over. They'll strike back through her now. Her. Tessa's name flashed through my head before I could stop it. I turned on the TV. Every network showed the same scene. Tessa, standing in front of reporters, crying under bright lights. I didn't know what was happening. My husband's obsession destroyed this family. He's framing innocent kids for attention. The town loved her again instantly. The grieving wife of a deranged veteran. The interviews spread faster than truth itself. On forums and comments, he's crazy. She's the real victim. Someone get those poor kids away from him. She flipped the story overnight with one performance. Morgan called moments later, voice strained. They're painting you as unstable. Dominic's PR people are feeding it to the networks. They'll try to get a restraining order next. What happens when the whole story drops? I asked. They'll try to bury it before that can happen. I hung up and stared at the screen until it dimmed. The storm outside raged harder than ever, rain battering the windows like fists. Even through the chaos, the war room stayed calm. The walls full of red thread and faces were now more than evidence. They were prophecy. Every empire of corruption falls not from might, but from a single lie unraveling. As lightning split the sky beyond the window, I whispered again to the empty room. You wanted control, Tessa. I'm just giving you exactly that, public control. Outside, another car idled for a moment before driving off. I didn't bother watching. I just traced the name Dominic on the center of the board and drew a thick line through it. Phase 3 had already begun. Because tonight, this town's golden boys wouldn't just be losing their futures. They'd be watching their parents' entire world collapse with them. The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days. It flowed through the gutters like a warning, soaking the banners that once read faith, family, fortitude. Everywhere I went, people avoided my eyes, whispering the way they do when they think they're safe behind glass. By now, everyone in town had picked a side, either the fallen heroes they once worshipped or the disgraced soldier who refused to shut up. It didn't matter which. The truth had split the entire place in half, and I was standing in the middle of the crack. Morgan's voice came through the encrypted line that night. We got a break, she said. Federal agents just seized records from a private server at Dominic's law firm. What did they find? She paused. Nothing they should have found. Every database was wiped 4 hours before the raid. Someone tipped him off. I looked around my office. Maps, photos, threads. The war room now felt half alive, wires pulsing with static from the storm. There's a second server, I said. There always is. Morgan hesitated. How can you know? Because I do the same thing, I admitted. You don't erase the file that buries you. You move it somewhere only fear can protect. That night, I drove through the rain toward the courthouse. It sat on the hill above town like an old promise gone rotten, its windows glowing with sterile white light. I parked behind maintenance sheds and slipped through the side entrance. I knew every inch of that building from records work years ago, every hallway and utility route. The archives in the basement were sealed, but I wasn't after paper. I needed the judge's personal chambers, his office. That's where the truth would be. The door was locked electronically. A decade-old access code from my background work in construction still granted me entry. It clicked once, soft as breath. Inside, the place smelled of oak and expensive whiskey. Certificates lined the walls. Service, justice, honor. In the center, his mahogany desk gleamed like polished gilt. I plugged an external drive into his computer. The machine came alive, fans spinning, a faint hum through the quiet. Hidden folders bloomed across the screen. Legal reports, scanned court transcripts, donation logs. Then one that froze me. Field incident. Click. Inside was a video file, date stamped the same night my twins were found. It opened with grainy footage from a fixed angle, the high school security feed. I watched again as the 6 stars of the Lions varsity team pulled my boys across the turf, their laughs echoing through the dark. The judge's son, Ryder, hit first. The others followed. Then, midway through the chaos, something new. A second camera angle, one that hadn't appeared before in Felix's footage. It showed the bleachers. Judge Dominic, standing in a raincoat under an umbrella. Watching, not moving, just standing there, arms crossed, letting it happen. He wasn't just covering the crime. He was supervising it. My breath slowed until I could hear my heartbeat ticking with the storm. When I scrubbed forward in the footage, I saw another figure step beside him halfway through, the sheriff. Dominic said something. The sheriff nodded. The rest of the town could debate what happened, but I was staring at proof that it wasn't just cruelty. It was sanctioned punishment. My sons were examples. A sudden sound behind me pulled me out of the trance, the door latch. I turned too late. Dominic stood there, rain dripping from his coat, eyes narrow but calm. You should have stayed quiet, he said slowly. The security lights flickered on, reflecting against the wet marble floor. Did you come here to confess? I asked. He smiled faintly. Confession is for those who lose. You lost long before this started. People see a broken soldier, not a father seeking truth. You made sure of that. Dominic stepped closer, lowering his voice. We built this town. Every contract, every donation, every family name flows through this courthouse. You think exposing me will fix anything? It will only remind them why men like me keep order. I pointed to the monitor behind me, the frozen image of his rain-soaked face watching my children being tied up. Order like that. His mask cracked for a split second. That night was a lesson. Every great man teaches his son discipline. So do we. That word, lesson, snapped something clean inside me. I'd squeeze triggers for less than that overseas. But here, vengeance wouldn't be with fists or bullets. It'd be with exposure. The one thing men like him feared more than death. Before he could move closer, I pulled the drive from his computer and slipped it into my jacket pocket. You're finished, I said. He gave a quiet laugh. You think that's the only copy? That footage disappears the moment I call in. Maybe, I admitted. But this time, I'm not the only one watching. Right then, a red light blinked on the computer. The very camera I'd planted earlier that evening hidden among the ceiling vents was recording everything. His face, his words, his arrogance. He noticed the angle too late. His expression fell. For the first time, Dominic looked small. Just another man in an expensive suit who thought power meant protection. He exhaled. You won't walk out of this building. Probably not, I said, stepping past him. But you already didn't. When I reached my truck outside, I sent the live feed straight to Morgan's secure channel. Her reply was instant. Got it. I'll hand this to federal prosecutors myself. By dawn, Dominic's mansion was crawling with FBI vehicles. Agents poured through the gates, seizing boxes, shutting down networks. The sheriff's house went next. Within hours, headlines exploded. Judge suspended pending investigation. Local heroes scandal deepens. The news anchor's tone shifted from hesitant to hungry. The town that worshipped its lions finally turned on them. Parents railed against the school. Donors pulled out. Businesses withdrew. The empire of silence was rotting in real time. I stood at the hospital window watching lightning shimmer over the hills. One monitor beeped differently that morning, softer, steadier. The nurse's words broke the darkness around me. He's opening his eyes. Oliver. My son blinked up through the haze. It wasn't full consciousness, not speech, but it was life. His hand twitched around my fingers. I leaned close and whispered, "It's almost over." But deep down, I knew the fire wasn't done burning. Because somewhere out there, one piece still hadn't fallen. Tessa. The dominoes had reached her doorstep, and I could already feel the fear she must have had watching the same headlines. Her friends abandoning her, donors pulling campaign cash, her reputation bleeding out in real time. By evening, she called. Not defiant this time, broken. They came to the house, she said, voice hoarse. Agents, reporters, everyone. They asked questions about money, about phone records. What did you do, Grant? The truth, I said. Her breathing wavered. They have my emails. I'll lose everything. You lost everything when you sold your soul for it. I said quietly, then hung up. Rain kept falling. News vans lined the town's streets. Dominic and the sheriff were under arrest by nightfall, their sons suspended, their faces all over national media. But behind those flashing lights and headlines, Inside the calm white glow of the hospital room, I sat beside my sons again. For the first time in months, peace brushed against the air. Oliver's eyes moved faintly toward me, the smallest sign of recognition. The sound of their machines no longer felt like a countdown. It felt like survival. Still, one more truth waited. The final piece. One nobody else but me could deliver. Because if the judge's secret was how this nightmare started, Tessa's truth would be how it ended. The rain finally stopped the morning the invitations went out. A community healing town hall. A chance for the town to move forward from the terrible misunderstanding. The flyer bore Tessa's face. The colors were soft, comforting, the kind they use when they want guilt to look like grace. She was speaking, it said, reclaiming her voice after pain. And there it was again. The town choosing the lie that made them comfortable over the truth that made them ashamed. I watched the announcement on the morning news. She stood on the courthouse steps, framed perfectly for cameras. Her voice was steady, flawless. Our family has been through unimaginable tragedy. But hate won't heal what's broken. Hate. That's what she called justice now. Behind her, news microphones glinted like the muzzles of guns pointed my way. The reporters ate it up. Questions, smiles, sympathy. And for a few days, it looked like it was working, the narrative turning once again in her favor. The devastated wife of a soldier gone rogue. The unlucky mother of injured boys. But I'd seen it coming. That's why I'd saved the final cut. The proof no speech could erase. It was Friday evening when the town gathered in the municipal auditorium. The same officials who had watched my family fall were lined up like saints. Flags behind them. Smiles rehearsed. Reporters filled the aisles. Every local channel had promised full coverage. Tessa entered last. Perfect posture, soft colors, carefully timed tears. The town cheered her name. And then a bead of static cracked through the speakers. The lights dimmed slightly. One of the projector screens flickered to life. No one had cued it. At first, it showed snow. Then a sound, rain, faint and real. A goalpost shining in the dark. The footage. For 3 long seconds, no one breathed. Then the figures appeared. 6 players dragging 2 smaller silhouettes through the mud. The laughter. The tape. The impact. The screams. When the lightning hit, the frame froze, capturing her face. Tessa, standing under an umbrella beside Dominic, phone raised in her hand. Gasps cut through the hall like glass shattering. People shouted. Some covered their mouths. Reporters scrambled, cameras flashing wild. Tessa stepped forward, shaking her head, voice trembling into a microphone. This isn't real. That's not me. It's edited. But the video kept rolling. Every word Dominic said that night. Every line he confessed while I filmed him. His voice booming through the speakers. Every great man teaches his son discipline. So do we. The crowd turned from confusion to outrage. Murmurs turned to shouts. The pastor on the front row closed his Bible. An old neighbor yelled from the back, "You lied to us." Panic spread like fire. Tessa's campaign manager pulled at her arm. The mayor tried to kill the lights, but the feed ran from my remote link. Untraceable, unbreakable. I stood in the back, unseen, watching her world implode. She turned her head toward the dim audience, scanning faces until her eyes froze on mine. Recognition hit her like a blade. Realization, fear, guilt, all at once. For the first time, she looked small. Reporters swarmed forward, pushing mics, questions flying over each other. Did you pay them, Tessa? Is it true you were there? Did you set up your own children? She tried to speak, but no sound came out. Security stepped in, ushering officials to safety. The sheriff, temporary replacement now, stood on stage frozen, pale beneath the lights. In the chaos, I turned and walked out. The night air was cold, clean after weeks of rain. My boots splashed through puddles as the echoes of shouting trailed behind me. On a live feed from my phone, I saw her finally crumble on stage, covering her face as cameras zoomed closer. Her last words before they cut the broadcast were faint but clear. I just wanted them to be better. I didn't mean, and then silence. I didn't go home right away. I ended up at the hospital again. The night nurse smiled when she saw me. Oliver's been asking for you, she said. Her tone softened. He's awake, really awake this time. My throat locked. I stepped into the room slowly, afraid it was another dream I'd lose. He was there, pale but alive, his eyes half open, tracking the light. When he saw me, a small sound escaped him, part word, part breath. Dad. I had no words. I just took his hand, and in that small, trembling palm, everything I had left in this world found shape again. I told him stories I wasn't supposed to tell, about the ocean missions, about laughter in the barracks, about life before all this. He smiled once, barely but enough. For the first time in months, the machines didn't sound like reminders of death. They sounded like rhythm, heartbeat, continuance. Outside the room, Morgan waited, her expression a mix of exhaustion and something close to relief. It's over, she said quietly. Dominic's in custody. The arrests extend to the sheriff's deputies. The footage is authenticated. There's nothing left to hide. Not everything, I said. Not yet. She frowned, confused. You mean Tessa? I nodded. She hesitated. She'll face the charges, you know. The federal angle ties her to conspiracy. But that's a court matter now. I don't want prison to do what Lesson couldn't, I said. I want silence to feel heavy, to know what watching loss feels like. Morgan looked at me closely, as if studying whether revenge had finally broken or finished me. And what about you after this? I turned back toward the dim glow of the window, the reflection of machines pulsing like faint stars. I'm not after the old me. I'm after peace. She nodded quietly, then left. Before dawn, the news replayed the town hall footage on every channel. Words like exposed, betrayal, and scandal filled every lower third graphic. Tessa's photo appeared beside Dominic's and the other fathers, the headline reading, "Justice unravels the lions." And for once, I didn't watch in anger, only stillness. I stood at Oliver's bedside, one hand resting on the blanket, the faint warmth of life beneath my fingers. Somewhere down the hall, a nurse hummed softly. For the first time, the storm truly ended outside. The gray sky lightened, the world starting again. She'd built her life on public approval. I'd built mine on quiet endurance. Both had finally met their truth in the same place, under a field's goalpost drenched in rain. When I walked out of the hospital at sunrise, the town looked different. Not better, just honest. And in honesty, there's healing, even if it hurts like hell. The town never slept again after the night of the meeting. Every screen flickered with headlines, live coverage, and disbelief. What once felt like power now looked like shame printed in bold. The empire of those names finally cracked under the weight of its own lies. By sunrise, multiple arrest warrants went active. I stood alone on the sidewalk outside the courthouse, coffee cooling in my hand as vans marked FBI pulled up the steep hill. Officers in black jackets streamed up the marble steps like a flood. Cameras clicked, reporters shouted, sirens arced in the distance. It wasn't celebration. It was reckoning. Morgan called from the district office. "They've got Dominic," she said, voice clipped with adrenaline. "The sheriff too, and two of the players' fathers. We pushed the federal violation, obstruction, tampering, accessory to assault. It's official." "And the boys?" I asked. She hesitated. "Juvenile hearings pending. Two already confessed under immunity deals. Dominic's son's cracking first." That name sent a chill down my spine. Ryder, the ringleader, the face of everything they'd worshipped. "They'll turn on him," I said quietly. "They already have." The courthouse doors swung open. Dominic was escorted out in handcuffs, head down, rain spitting against polished marble. Cameras shouted his name, but he didn't speak. The same man who called himself a teacher of discipline now looked like a relic stripped of dignity. I didn't smile. I just watched. Because no celebration replaces what was lost. Not far behind came the sheriff, his wrists bound, his badge hanging from one hand like a defeated flag. Flashbulbs painted the scene white, stopping time. By noon, newscasters repeated it nonstop. Local power figures arrested in assault cover-up involving minor sons of retired Delta Force veteran. They finally said my name. They finally said veteran. Not disgraced, not unstable. Just a man who told the truth. When the dust settled, I drove to the station. Not for closure, but to face what needed to be seen with my own eyes. Ryder sat behind a one-way glass panel in holding room B. A boy without his jersey now, just state clothes, trembling knees pressed together. Gone was the smirk, the arrogance. His hands shook as he ran his thumbs along the cuffs. When he noticed the reflection in the glass, his head lifted. Our eyes didn't meet directly, but the air between us changed. He mouthed something I didn't expect. I'm sorry. Whether real or rehearsed, I couldn't tell. The damage was already written too deep. The officer beside me said nothing. Neither did I. I just watched the kid choke on his own silence. And for the first time, I didn't feel anger. Just pity twisted through exhaustion. Moments later, motion stirred in my periphery. 2 agents escorted her down the hall. Tessa, shackled at the wrists, makeup gone, hair undone, eyes hollow. She looked straight ahead, refusing to glance my way until the doors opened into another room. Finally, she spoke, low and bitter. You filmed everything. I answered quietly. You destroyed everything. She turned. Desperation curled around her words. Do you think this makes you a hero? You tore down the father of this town. He tore himself down when he decided lessons were worth blood, I said. Her voice thinned, shaking. You could have stopped when they were arrested. But you won't stop until everyone hates me. I met her eyes. You were supposed to love them, Tessa. Instead, you watched. The officers led her away. Her shoes echoed down the corridor, clicks fading into the hum of fluorescent lights. When she disappeared, I realized something no victory could cover. Love can rot when pride turns it into something you perform for strangers. She'd become a woman trapped in applause, unable to tell performance from reality. Outside, rain threatened to fall again, the sky heavy but waiting. I drove to the hospital. The nurse met me with cautious joy. Both boys are stable, she said. Oliver's awake, talking. Lucas responds to light pressure now. She smiled as she added softly. They just needed time. Time. That word felt strange in my mouth after everything. When I entered the room, sunlight pushed through the half-open blinds. Machines still beeped, but softer now. Oliver smiled weakly when he saw me, tubes curling like vines around the edge of his bed. Hey, Dad, he whispered. You look tired. I laughed quietly. That's what happens when you fight a whole town. He blinked. Mom. The smile drained from my face before I could hide it. She's gone away for a while. He nodded slowly, and his eyes drifted to his brother's still frame. Will he wake up? Soon, I said. He's strong. You both are. He reached his hand a little closer. I took it, holding until the tremors in my own fingers eased. We sat there in silence. No speeches, no promises. Just the quiet rhythm of survival shared between 2 people who'd lost too much but still breathed. Later that night, Morgan joined us, paperwork in hand. The charges will stick, she said. You won. I shook my head softly. No one wins something like this. She studied me for a moment, understanding. Then she looked toward Oliver and said, when you're ready, there are programs for relocation, new schools, new start. Montana, I said before thinking. You ever been? She smiled faintly. Cold, quiet, empty. Might be what you need. That night, I packed the last boxes from the house. All that remained were the photo frames I never smashed, the medals I never hung back up, and the silence of places I once called home. Tessa called from county lockup the next morning. A guard said she wanted to speak. I listened, then hung up without answering. Some words deserve the grave they built. When the paperwork cleared 2 weeks later, we left the town behind. The moving truck rumbled across endless plains. Just me, Oliver, and Lucas's bed resting in the back, machines humming gently beside him. Miles of sky stretched above, blue unbroken. By sunset, we reached Montana. The cabin wasn't much, but it was high ground. Fresh air, quiet forest, a wide porch that faced the horizon like forgiveness itself. I set up the hospital equipment inside, checked each line, each monitor, each pulse. As the machine steadied, I opened the window. The wind smelled like rain and pine, the kind of air you can trust. Oliver sat wrapped in a blanket near the window. "It's peaceful," he said softly. "It's home," I told him. Nothing more had to be said. That night, a single letter slid through the cabin's mail slot. No stamp, no return address. Inside was a handwritten note. She didn't plan to kill them. She planned to collect. Dominic told her to make it bigger, to cash out the policy. "I'm sorry. Our writer." His handwriting trembled across the page. "Every confession adds weight, not freedom." I burned the letter in the fireplace until only ash remained. There was no space left for rage anymore. Only release. Outside, snow began to fall lightly, quiet and endless. I watched my boys sleep, Oliver dreaming softly, Lucas's chest rising steady beside him. Justice had been served, not by vengeance, not by violence, but by exposure, by the truth that refused to stay buried. And in the hush of that mountain night, with the faint beeping of machines blending into the wind, I finally allowed myself to feel something I hadn't since that night on the field. Peace. Snow blanketed the peaks outside like silence had finally taken form. Weeks had passed since Montana became our hiding place from everything loud, corrupt, and cruel. The cabin stood quiet, breathing with us. Inside, the fire pulsed low in the hearth, casting shadows that moved like memory. Most nights, I still woke before dawn to check Lucas's vitals, old habits from both war and fatherhood. His skin had gained color again, faint warmth returning under my palm. He wasn't fully back yet, but his breathing told a story I could trust. One that said, "Not yet done." Oliver recovered faster. He could walk short distances now, though the scar above his eye never faded. Sometimes he traced it, not out of vanity, but as if remembering the cost of survival. He wandered out onto the porch just before sunrise. "You ever think we'll be normal again?" he asked softly. "Normal's just another word for pretending," I said. "We'll be honest instead." He smiled faintly, the kind of half-smile that comes after too much pain and not enough years. The papers finally arrived one morning. The official rulings, sealed in crisp envelopes. Dominic, convicted. The sheriff, disbarred and imprisoned. The other fathers, under investigation for obstruction. Tessa pled guilty in a federal plea deal. The courts cited coercion, public safety, and mental instability. But none of those words outweighed what she'd done. She was sentenced to 8 years, eligible for parole in 5. They called her remorseful. I called her something else, unfinished. I didn't attend the hearing. Morgan did. She sent a message that afternoon. "It's done. It's really over this time." But endings are never clean. They just stop hurting enough for you to keep going. When the snow melted, spring crept across the valley. I found myself fixing fences, chopping wood, learning quiet all over again. The boys' laughter began filling the air in small doses, cautious, real. One evening, I sat with Oliver by the lake behind our cabin. The water reflected the sky, turning everything gold. He tossed pebbles into the surface, watching ripples spread. "Dad," he said finally, "do you hate her?" I thought about it. The question dug somewhere deep, somewhere where hate used to live. But now it was hollow. "I pity her," I replied. "She thought life was about being admired. But what matters is being remembered for truth, not image." He nodded slowly and kept throwing stones. The ripples kept returning. Some truths take their time to settle. Behind us, the cabin lights flickered as Lucas's voice cracked the stillness, small, unsteady, but real. "Dad." I froze. Oliver turned. Lucas sat upright on the couch by the window, his pale face glowing in the amber light. His eyes trembled open fully for the first time. "Dad?" He said again, weak but smiling. It's cold. I didn't think. I just ran. Across the porch, through the doorway, kneeling beside him as the machines beeped steady and strong. His hands were colder than the air outside, but they clutched mine with a strength I hadn't felt in months. You're okay, I whispered, voice breaking. You made it back. Oliver came running in, hugging him from the other side. The three of us tangled together in that tiny living room, the sound of crying and laughter mixing until it didn't matter which was which. That moment, just breathing together, was worth every sleepless night, every scar, every loss. The local news faded away after a while. The world spun on. Other scandals took their place, other tragedies replaced ours. People forgot, but we didn't need them to remember. Justice had already found its mark. Truth had already spoken. My war wasn't against the world anymore. It was against becoming like it. Now, when I sit on the porch at sunset, the wind rolls through the trees in the same rhythm as the monitors once did. Calm, consistent, alive. The mountains burn orange before turning blue, and somewhere in that fading light, I find forgiveness not for them, but for myself. Because survival is more than breathing. It's learning to live again without hate. The boys still ask for stories sometimes. Not about battles or betrayals, but about who people become when life breaks them. Those are the ones that matter most. The quiet stories, the ones that keep your soul awake. Tonight, as I tucked them in, Oliver asked, "Do you think Mom will be different one day?" I brushed his hair back and said, "Everyone has a choice. Maybe hers will come too late, but it'll come." He thought about that, then smiled. "If it doesn't, she'll just have to see what peace looks like without her." Smart kid. Maybe smarter than me already. Before turning off the light, I looked at both of them. Two beating hearts that refused to quit. They were my proof that life doesn't end with tragedy. It just changes shape. And now, here in this final quiet, after everything burned and healed and rebuilt, there's one lingering thought I want to leave behind. Not as a soldier, not as a man shaped by violence, but as a father who saw what silence can destroy. Forgiveness isn't weakness. It's freedom. And truth. Truth will always outlast everything that tries to bury it. If you've listened this far,